We believe that we are doing our obligations. How do we know that we are doing our obligations?
Your efficiency increases. You are internally motivated. And you are doing that action with such joy and exuberance. If you have a desire to score well in the exams, then your obligation is what? Study.
Namaste. Welcome to today's episode of Wellness Wisdom. We have with us Sri Ishwaran, who will talk to us about obligations. Namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, in the last episode, we spoke about actions, choices, and we realized that obligations are very important to understand. We believe that we are doing our obligations, but it may not be so. How do we know that we are doing our obligations?
You can understand your obligations based on certain effects that is supposed to be experienced by you when you are performing your obligations. When I am doing my obligations, I should have certain feel. So based on what I feel, I make that call. I understand that I am doing my obligation. The symptoms of you doing your obligatory duties, if you see, the first symptom we feel is the fundamental root. Very theoretical, it will appear first. Okay. The root cause is reduction of your desires. So as of now, I'll say keep it aside. Don't worry about reduction of desires, which is the one factor, acid test. The test of you doing your obligations is reduction of your desires. This is too much. Say, okay. Now there are easier things to get. That is, all this what I'm going to tell now is the effect of reduction of desires. Okay. First one is your efficiency in performance of your obligations increases. If I have X amount of skill, when I am doing it as an obligation, it becomes X plus. When I am able to perform beyond my skill set, we can understand I am performing obligation. So first thing we say is your efficiency increases. 1. 2. For all of us, the motivation factor for me to go that extra mile is something externally driving, like incentivizing in the corporate world. So by giving more incentives, we expect the person to be performing little more. When you do as your obligation, you will have that initiative. The motivation will be from internal. You are not dependent on external factors to motivate you. You will have the internal drive to perform that action. So the second one, let's say, is this. The third factor, most important one, is you will not have any mental pressure. There is no agitation. By doing those actions is no longer experienced by you as burdensome. There is tremendous pleasure in doing it. Right? Now from these 3 points, you can derive the 4th point. Your efficiency increases. You are internally motivated. And you are doing that action with such joy and exuberance. That means the 4th factor, I would say, is you will be looking forward to do more and more of it. Isn't it? Imagine that you were to be liking this conversation, right? Assuming that you are liking this conversation, this interview, what you will be doing, what the audience will be doing? They will be looking forward for more. Imagine the same thing were to be such a pain. We will say, waiting for an opportunity, the least excuse, I will stop it. You see, now obligations, the actions become so effortless, no burden, such a pleasure, and I am doing it with such high level of efficiency. Obviously, I will be looking forward for more and more for me to do the obligation. Now go back and see, wherever you are claiming to be performing your obligations, do you get experience all this? Weekends, kitchen closed in the house. Why? Because the lady of the house is fed up cooking. The fellow who says that I am playing a sport says, I am tired of it. So for me to get the joy, what I have to do, sir? Something else. The cricket team says, we are doing a team building exercise by playing volleyball. I say, hey, you guys are supposed to be playing cricket, right? And you go and speak to the volleyball team, they say what? We go for skiing. The person who go for skiing says, I will go for long drive. Now, now you have trained yourself to operate in that particular field, but when you get into that field, the problem is that action becomes so painful, burdensome. What will happen? This is why I say duties and obligations have become a Frankenstein. We are scared of it. If you actually understand obligations, you will not have the problem of performing it. You will be looking forward for more and more of it.
Very interesting, sir. The 4 pointers of how to figure out something is your obligation.
5 pointers.
5 pointers.
The thumb rule you don't forget.
Okay.
Reduction of desires.
Okay.
That's the thumb. Rest are all, consequences of it. Secondary.
All right.
Primary effect is reduction of desires. Like in the tree you have primary root and secondary roots.
Correct.
The primary thing is your reduction of desires. Then comes all the other factors.
Very, very well said, sir. How do we find out what are our obligations?
See, your obligations can be defined based on 4 parameters. I'll go in the hierarchy of the least one to the most ideal. The least one is based on the role that you play in life. As a husband, what is my obligation? As wife, what is my obligation? As citizen, what's my obligation? As this, what's my obligation? Now, you function according to what is the role that you play in that particular scenario. This is one way of defining obligation. This is the central message of Rama's life. If you see Rama's life, every scenario, every scene that he appears, always you will find him asking this one question. What is my role here? What am I supposed to do? But then we say that's not the most ideal method for 2 reasons. One, the role-based things keeps changing as the time changes. One, like the father-son relationship that existed about 100 years back vis-a-vis parent-child relationship today. About 70 years back, 50 years back, if you go, 100 years we don't know, but I have seen. Father enters the room, son will get out of the room. They don't look at each other. They don't talk to each other. Today, what is it? Does it mean the current generation is lacking affection, respect and all that? No. That's what we come to conclusion most of the time. The earlier generation, used to do that. Now, current generation is not doing it. The daughter says, why don't you take the cordless and go and speak in the next room? Because the father says, talk, reduce the volume of the TV. She says, why are you asking me to reduce? You take the cordless and go to the next room. No. Problem solved. And that father comes and tells me, you see, sir, I have never spoken like that to my father. See, role-based changes. So, that's not most effective, number one. Number two problem is, you will find them conflicting. Second parameter is based on your desires of life. If you have a desire to score well in the exams, then your obligation is what? Study. Right? You are supposed to sit and study. You cannot be going to the ground taking the cricket bat. If your goal is to play for the national team, then where are you supposed to be? Not on the study table, you should be sitting, you should be in the ground. So, obligation is the penalty that you have to pay for your desires. Again, there is a problem why desires keeps changing, desires by nature conflicting. Not ideal method. So, first one, role-based, society decides, problem. Two, desires you take as a reference to fix obligations, also a method, but not ideal. The third one is a better method, where wherever I have received a favor, I am supposed to pay back. This is based on the receipt, the benefits that I have received from any source, whether it is parents or whether it is the society or whether it is my teacher, whether it is my friend, whether it is husband or wife or child, whoever it is. I have received a favor. All of us understand the child should be grateful to the mother. Hardly we realize the mother also should be equally be grateful to the child. Imagine the child refuses to drink milk, what happens? It's a pain. If we say a child should be grateful that mother gave milk, equally mother should be grateful that the child took it. So either case it is there. So wherever you have received a favor, benefit, you are supposed to pay back. That's your obligation. That's a message of Muhammad. It says, he is the best amongst you who is best at repaying obligation. Fourth factor is goal-based. Based on what is the goal that you have fixed for yourself in life. Anything that you do to reach the goal, that becomes your obligation.
Sir, we spoke about 4 factors of how we decide something is our obligation, and is it possible that something is not my obligation and I don't know it?
Yes. There are certain things which you are not obligated to do. That is, following your mind, your desires, your feelings and emotions. When I say that, be careful. I am not saying you should not feel emotions. This is where many mistake. They think, you should not be feeling an emotion. No. In emotions, remember, Feeling an emotion is different. Expressing that emotion is different. So when I am going to express my emotion, then intellect comes into picture. That is obligation. I express my emotions based on my obligation. I see a person making a mistake. Right. Now I have to ask the question, who is that a person? If I see that is my child making a mistake, then what? I'm supposed to go there and say, if I see my neighbor, what I have to do, sir? I can suggest to him, right? If it is my child, I have to interfere. Even if the child says, even if the child is not asking for my help, we have to go. If the same thing is done by my neighbor, then what I can do, sir? I say I can just go and suggest to him to correction. Unknown person. I don't have to interfere. I don't have to go there and tell him, hey, what you are doing is wrong. That is not my obligation. So that is why we say you need to have that clarity in terms of understanding what is my obligation. And in obligation, remember, the critical factor of obligation is the word sacrifice. Obligatory duties means you need to have the sacrificial attitude. If you are not willing for sacrifice, then you cannot be performing your obligatory duties. See, there's a poem by William Wordsworth, Laodamia. There, the Greek had a war in Troy, with Troy. The oracle of the Greek had pronounced that the Greeks will win the battle, but the first soldier who puts on the soil of Trojan will die. So the entire Greek army, the battleship has reached the shores, and the Greeks were debating among themselves who is going to jump in. The young prince Protesilaus jumped in and rushed. And of course, the Greek won the battle and Protesilaus died. That is obligation. So anytime you think of obligation, remember this name, Protesilaus. You need to have that sacrificial attitude for you to do your obligations. Because the definition of obligation is not catering to my body, my mind, my intellect. There is no gain for the little self. Without any idea of what is it that I am going to gain. Because I told you, based on the receipt, I have already received. Now by doing this, what more I can ask him to give me? I have already received favors from my parents who took care of me when I was an invalid. Now, me doing for them cannot be expecting more from them. You see, you are going and repaying the loan to the bank. You cannot say, I have deposited 10 crores. There is the interest for that. The bank will say what? You are just repaying the loan. You are not supposed to be expecting interest for this deposit. If you are depositing in your account, yes. Your already overdraft is there of 150 crores. You have only paid 10 crores. He will ask what? Pay interest for that 140 also. The obligations means sacrifice. So in obligatory duties, remember, you have to sacrifice.
Having spoken about sacrifice, it brings us to another very important part, today's relationships. How do obligations help or nurture or come in the way of relationships?
It is performance of obligations alone can nurture your relationships. What is the problem of relationship today is non-performance of it. Today, if at all we say in terms of relationships, in the name of obligations also, what we are doing is a barter system. I do this to you, you should do that to me. Invariably, if you see, what I will be doing to you will be gross. In return, what you should give? Subtle. I will bring a present to you on your birthday. But what I expect in return? Love and affection from you I expect. Present is gross. Love and affection is subtle. How can you give the gross and expect the subtle in return? Even in the barter system also we are not having a fair game. Even here, it's like you go to temple and say, no, oh God, I will give my hair, get me the contract of 10 crores. Nobody goes to God and says, I will give my eyes. Only that one devotee did that. Kannappa. He is the only one who gave eyes to God. Or else we have what? We'll give eyes, sir, but not eyes. Actually, there are people, temples where you will find. They'll be selling this
glass eyes.
Eyes. It's a tin. It's not even a silver. Golden eye, silver eye, at least that you give, no? No. It's tin actually. Tin sheet. You make the tin sheet eye and you give to God and you expect God to give you what? Moksha. Heaven. What a bargain here. This is the problem. When you are doing as obligation, you will cherish it and the other person will not feel that suffocation. The other person will not feel the burden that, oh my God. Nowadays, people who organize, the birthday parties, they are buying gifts. I said, hey, why you are buying gifts? Return gift now. My birthday, you come and give me gift. Because you have given me gift, I have to give you return gift. We are making a mockery of life. Remember, obligations alone will nourish. Live your life based on the duties, not on rights. Today, everywhere we are all starting to think and discuss in terms of what is my right. Every citizen says what is my right. The government says what is my right. The teacher says what is my right. The student says what is my right. Husband says what is my right. Wife says what is my right. Parents say what is my right. Children say what is my right. Nowhere we find nowadays people talking about duties. Shift it. The moment you shift your focus from rights to my duties, you will find the relationship harmonious. You will never have a problem.
Thank you, sir. I think I also never knew there are so many different dimensions of this word obligations, and we learned today about duties. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Stay with us for another episode of Wellness Wisdom. Thank you.
Click on the bell icon to watch our latest videos.